What's going on, everyone? This is a VS4-10 Fordyce, and everybody loves a mud truck. I build a mud truck every couple of years or so, it seems, just because I get that itch, and every once in a while you just have to do it. Now, I haven't built a VS4-10 mud truck yet. Oddly enough, I think the last one I built was a Traxxas TRX4 Sport mud truck. So I wanted to do another one, and this seemed like a great project to do it on. This is a brand new Fordyce with the peel still in place and the radio still attached in the bed. Now, I've got a plan for this one that is reminiscent of a project that I've done in the past. Now, in the past, over 10 years ago, I designed a product called the Burley Mud Truck Conversion, and I did that for an SCX-10 platform before the SCX-10 II even. Now, that worked great. It was simple to do, and I thought that that would be an awesome thing to do for this. However, it's different, and that product doesn't exist anymore. So I designed up a version for this platform, and I'm going to execute it today. Now, I designed up the parts and I sent them off to Send Cut Send. Now, I don't have them back yet. I designed them last night and sent them already, and I may have them as soon as early next week, but you're going to see me mock this all up into place. Now, what I'll be doing is a drop cradle style bracket that is going to give me about a 30mm lift, which is about 1.25 inches, which is quite a bit at this scale of truck. 1.25 inches is a decent leveling kit on many vehicles in the full size world even. So you're gonna notice. Now, beyond that, I thought I'd go a little bit extra. Rather than just lifting it straight up, I wanted to extend the wheelbase a little bit. And while I was extending the wheelbase, I thought maybe I'll widen it a little bit. So I think that what my approach to this is going to be is I'm going to take and install some H10 axles. These are the axles that come on the optic, like over my shoulder here. These are significantly wider than the F10s that come in this vehicle. So I grabbed a set of those. Those are also a 4-link with servo on axle, which will allow me to make this so much simpler because my link or my steering geometry, I don't have to worry about it. I can just bolt it onto that. Now, if I wanted to use the F10 axles that were in here, I could use the servo on axle mount that comes with the VS4-10 stance. Now, you would still need to convert to a 4-link, but that isn't that difficult with that setup. Couple, maybe one extra link is about all you would need. But I'm gonna go the most aggressive route because why not? So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna get this thing stripped down a little bit so that I can get everything taken apart. I 3D printed the parts already just to do as a test fit until the aluminum ones get here from Send Cut Send. Now, I'm going to make these parts all available to you so that you can order them if you like as well. Gonna be a couple of 3D printed parts that'll go along with it. They're probably not going to be mandatory, but nice to have a little extra, rigidity in place. But I don't think that they're gonna be really all that needed. So either way, let's dive in and get this conversion done. It's gonna be an easy one. All right, so pretty quick to strip that down. Did have to take all the bolts out of one side of the rear portion of the chassis as well as through the sliders to be able to separate the chassis a little bit to pull the transmission out in one piece with the skid plate because that's what we're going to be relocating. We removed the axles, the shocks, all of that, and that'll get us a starting point to mock up and reassemble from here. Now I can start by reassembling the screws into the chassis for the back portion, and then I'm going to pull the printed parts off of the printer and start getting those mocked into place first. So these parts are printed to the same spec as the aluminum parts will be cut. The It's 2.03 or 2.08 thick aluminum, and that's what we have printed this to the same thickness as, just so that we can, you know, have a close approximation to the same parts that we'll be receiving. Now, these go on the outside of the chassis rails, which is going to cause these sliders to pull out just a little bit. Now, I assume that that will change some fit here and there on a couple of things, but I think that we can get by with it like that. I think that there are some changes that I'll be able to make to help counteract that down the road. Ideally, you could take and sand 2 millimeter off of the slider, but I don't think that that's going to be totally necessary. We're going to get this mocked up and see how it goes. So, first side is mocked up there. You can see that drop down that we've created. Gonna give us a nice monster / mud mega truck type stance on this thing, I think. Pretty happy overall to start. Get that other side installed, then we'll jump back in. Both sides are on now. From here, I'm gonna put the transmission back in, and this basically is just gonna bolt back in the center there, through those same holes that used to mount it to the upper portion of the chassis. We're going to attach that, and we're going to do a link swap at the same time. Now, the H10 links are a little bit different than the links that came out of here. Previously, the links that are in the VS4-10, the lower links go in these pockets here on the bottom of the skid plate. That's unchanged, but the upper links on the H10, they go to the outside of the skid plate portion in the front, which is this side here, and then they're in the standard place in the rear. So we got to pay attention to that as we're going, just to make sure that actually allows and gives us the clearance between the front of that motor and the drive shaft with the upper links. So small detail, but something that's definitely important to note as we start bolting this all in place. I pre-built the link set already, so you don't have to watch me sit here and spin rod ends onto these. The lower links are all the same length. The upper links slightly longer on the front uppers. And on those front uppers, they also have an offset pivot ball. So that offset pivot ball, which is the only one that's different, that also goes on the chassis side of the upper link in the front. With all those rear links in place already, I'm gonna go ahead and bolt in that rear axle too. Rear axle is in place. It's so far away from the chassis now. That's gonna be such a big lift. Mud trucks are silly and fun. All right, I'm gonna grab some hardware. We're gonna get these installed onto the chassis side here. For now, I'm just gonna drop in the stock takeout servo into this. And, you know, at least that'll give us something to do. I do need to flip the servo horn around for how it works in the H10. All right, we got axles in place. It looks like I need to adjust my upper link length just a little bit. I just ran the rod ends onto it. Need to extend them maybe a millimeter or so on each side just to make sure that it's centered and clears everything. One other reason I realized I needed to lengthen those front upper links just a little bit is because since they're on the outside of the chassis, that chassis added a little over 2 millimeters per side, which widens the mounting points out a little bit, which adds a little bit of length to that triangulated link. So just a couple of turns on each side was able to get that taken care of. And now I've got plenty of clearance for that part of it. Now, the distance that I designed this drop cradle to be isn't random or just what I thought would look good. It's specifically measured to be about the same as it is from where the shock mounts through the shock tower to the chassis. And that's because now we can mount these shocks onto the axle and then directly to the chassis. And we've just taken up that exact distance. If you want to use the stock length shocks, that's all you have to do. Just use the hole on the chassis that's going to best fit. Now on the Fordyce, the rear bed cage does sit down into these body posts, so we can't eliminate these shock towers. Up front, we can eliminate the shock towers, and if we want to use one of those holes, it'll just clean up the mounting a little bit easier. So that's likely the route that I'll decide to go up front. In the rear, we're just going to look at our mounting options and choose one that works best. We need to check the drive shaft length first. It may require some new drive shaft pieces, but I'm not 100% sure on that yet. Our front drive shaft length is too short, so I feel like that one we can just get a new set of plastic drive shaft parts, or you know, if you want to upgrade drive shaft, that's another option. I need to get the wiring cleaned up a little bit, but I'm going to mock the body back up in place. And then we're going to look at some wheels and tires. We're lifted up mud truck style already. I'm pretty happy. Now, as you can see, shocks mounted to the chassis is okay. Since we did just raise it 30 millimeters, another option would be to pick up some 120 millimeter shocks. Since these are 90s, pick up some 120s, and then you can use the shock towers in their normal position and have that longer look. That's something that I may also do just for fun, just because long shocks on a big mud truck are kind of cool. Now, wheels and tires. I ordered some very aggressive mud truck tires, and they'll be here shortly, and we'll wrap up with those. But you're not likely going to run the stock size. You're going to do a lift, you're going to probably want to put bigger tires on. Now, one option is also the Vanquish XMT. This is a 2.2 inch tire as far as the bead side goes, and it's 5.25 inches tall. So substantially taller than the stock tire, you know, if you're going to look at that option. So that would be a solid option. XMT, extreme mud terrain. I have 3 here. I don't know what I did with my 4th one. So I'm going to get these mounted up for now so that we can take a look. And we're going to have to kind of imagine what the peg leg would look like with the 4th one on there. But let's get this mocked up just because I want to see what this thing looks like as it's sitting here before we see our final version. All right, I got 3 of the XMTs mounted up. Hop along back there. But one thing I did is I put a bunch of preload in the shocks to stiffen it up because it had a lot more flex than it needed to. I mean, already has a lot. So when I did that though, it gives it too much angle on those lower links. I want it right here. That's where I want it. So I know I said 120 shocks earlier. I think I'm going to measure and figure out what the best length shock would be from, to get this exactly where I want it. Without the preload, this thing sits about where I want it to set. But when I put all the preload in, because I put it all the way down, and once it's all the way down, it feels pretty good. But, I just want to solve that and get it sitting just right and have that look of the long shock that I think is pretty cool overall. So I think that's one task that I need to get there. I actually do like the way these XMTs fit on here as well. Being an extreme mud terrain, it is appropriate at the same time. The width of everything, especially when it's sitting down where it should be, right about there with the level lower links, it looks very mega truck, very mega mud truck style. That front steering system, also something you would definitely see on that type of truck. So nothing inappropriate, as far as that goes. I like it. I like the width there. I went with 725 hubs on these 2.2 Riots. I'm going to sort out some shocks, get a full set of tires on here. And again, I actually have the final set of tires on the way, the J Concepts Fling Kings, which is kind of that rice and cane, super aggressive chevron mud truck style. It's also on a larger wheel, 2.6. So I've got those on the way. They'll be here shortly, and you'll see that before the end of the video. But getting the rolling stock all wrapped up, that's important to do. I may still look at doing a different servo, especially if I get the ride height down and we play around with shock length. I may need to do that, may need to get that low profile in there for that clearance or do the Dremel work. Also, maybe we throw a big brushless in this thing so it can rip wheelies and just absolutely, you know, bog deep. We'll look at the electronic situation. Maybe it's not totally necessary, but it's also always fun to do at the same time. And hopefully the aluminum lower parts show up here before the end of this so I can get it all wrapped up and show you just this super simple conversion. If it depends on how wild you want to take it as far as electronics and whatnot goes, but I think this is going to turn out to be pretty cool. A little bit left to do. I'm going to just do one more cut and I'll show you the final story. And the mud truck pretty much wrapped up. Now, my shocks didn't make it in time for this video, but I'm sure that those will make it here after the holidays as everything was just delayed in the mail. No big deal, but we got everything else accomplished. We got the J-Concepts Fling Kings mounted up, which look extremely appropriate. The width with those tires is just perfect, just right outside of the fenders, just like I'd want. So I went with the second narrowest hub offset. These J-Concepts Dragon wheels come with 4 different hubs. Now the only thing is that you don't get a lot of thread engagement. They do come with their own special shallow axle nut just because of that. So I'll make sure you use that. The other things that I did is I did modify the battery tray on the inside to get it down low, and I got the brushless system in there. We went with the Holmes Hobbies Polar Pro 2700 kV and a Castle Mamba X. It's just simple drop-in stuff. That side of things, you're up to whatever you think. Now I will have these plates available up on Send Cut Send, so you can purchase them and do this yourself. I'm going to do a 3D printed part that goes down here on the bottom that captures this upper link. I wouldn't say that that's necessary. So if you don't have a 3D printer, you actually don't need one to do this project. But if you have one, I think it'd be a bonus for strength in that specific area. And I'll have those files available on my website, which I'll also have a link for down below. This was a wildly simple, fun project that is just going to take a VS4-10 and turn it into something that makes you giggle a little bit more every once in a while. I'll have a running video up of this before too long. I'll make sure that I have somebody else there to help, just because trying to run one-handed in the mud just sounds like a recipe for disaster. So looking forward to that. I think this thing is going to be an absolute blast. Let me know what you think down below. If you enjoy the videos, hit the like button. I've got channel membership available. If you're interested in supporting the channel a little bit extra, you just get some behind the scenes videos, some candid stuff. You get a look at projects like this a little early. If you're interested in any of those details, also down in the description below for all of that. But that's gonna do it, and probably my last non-scale news video of 2024. It's been a fantastic year. I appreciate all of you who watched at any point during the year and look forward to 2025. So if you enjoyed it, again, hit the like button, and we'll see you guys on the next one.